dry, so maybe it won't rub on your jacket. Great one, jacket.
Alrighty.
All of the judges signed in.
Are my judges ready? Ever since I was a child, I was fascinated by three words: reduce, reuse, recycle. Taking something that had no value and turning it into something that did. I believe that I got this mentality from my grandparents. They recycled, they composted, and they even led hazardous waste and river cleanups around southern Missouri. And, being around that wore off on me a lot. And as a result, drove me to want to create something out of nothing in the sake of our environment. So in America, energy creation and storage is a very controversial topic. Nobody can quite decide what the best option is because every option is either unfeasible, expensive, or terribly polluting. However, I believe that a potential solution to this is to harness the unharnessed. Good evening. My name is Jeff Frazier, and I believe in greener energy for a greener world. Now, fossil fuels have Sorry, it's not working. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. So, fossil fuels have fueled our lives for ages. They're cheap, they're simple, and they're effective. However, that simplicity comes with a cost. So, fossil fuels are, of course, a limited resource. Fossilization takes millions of years to complete, and eventually we're going to run out of them. And even, they release terrible carbon emissions like sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide, and mercury. And remember, that is our main source of energy in America. And also, just harnessing them in general is dangerous because fly ash and bottom ash can wash off into streams and rivers and pollute heavily. And that's not good. And they also destroy landscapes trying to get this coal in general. They create strip mines in areas where coal is abundant, and a strip mine is basically just a big hole in the ground that you can get coal from. And these are terrible for the environment because they destroy landscapes and ecosystems as far as the eye can see. However, I believe that we may need to harness the unharnessed. Now, cows produce 150 to 260 pounds of methane per year, per cow. But methane is a very potent greenhouse gas. Now, it can trap heat in the atmosphere 84 times better than carbon dioxide. However, when it's burned as a biofuel, it's actually safer due to its molecular structure. So, how do we use methane? Now, methane, once it's pressurized and stored, it can be used as any other biofuel, like propane or butane. And it's used in stoves by homesteaders and anybody else that has their own biogas digester. It's even used in this New Holland tractor. So my product was a 55-gallon methane digester. Now, what is a digester, you may ask? Well, a digester basically allows for the microbes in manure to multiply and ferment the material down further to create methane. So once, so you put manure into the digester, and it breaks down into its basic structures, such as methane. The methane can be extracted, and what is left over is digestate. Now, digestate can be spread over crops and used as a fertilizer. So, for my product, we had a 55-gallon drum that we put a feed tube in. Now, the feed tube allows for continuous addition of materials into the digester. And the gas valve on top allows us to extract the methane. And although we haven't actually run anything through it yet, I do plan to do this in the future. So I had a lot of challenges in this project because I don't like reaching out for help with things like this. I'm a very self-contained person. If I feel that I cannot do something, I usually just give up. So I had to overcome that. Designing and conceptualizing the digester was also kind of difficult because I had to pull from industrial digesters and residential digesters that people have built in their own home. And sourcing actual consumer supplies was a bit difficult because when searching for supplies for this, I had a hard time filtering through industrial materials that were for sale, and industrial materials are either in bulk or incredibly expensive, and I did not have the budget to afford that kind of stuff. So methane isn't exactly the final solution. It's not even a perfect fuel. However, it comes with the benefit of being from waste. Now, I believe in a future where we can harness everything we put out as waste as efficiently and effectively as possible. Methane isn't the final solution, but it is a stepping stone towards greener energy for a greener world. Thank you. Do my judges have any questions?
So the methane that you collect,
Mm-hmm.
so my understanding is you use it to like burn.
Yeah.
Is that correct? So does it produce CO2 when it's burned?
Yes, but it.
Yeah. You said it wasn't perfect, so I wondered
Yeah,
if
it wasn't
that's
perfect.
part of it.
Yeah.
Is it like, you know, information on like the comparison of how much CO2 is produced from that compared to other sources like fossil fuels?
I don't really have any metrics on that, but I do know that it is better because it only has the CO2 instead of mercury, sulfur dioxide, that kind of stuff, heavy metals.
So did you find stuff in your research about examples like Colonial Energy and West Plains has a system for tapping landfills to collect methane to burn for energy?
I found a little bit on that, but
Okay. So would you have much in mind about transferring this to a larger scale?
well, it's already kind of used at a large scale, but it's not large enough to be like a main source of energy, because I know that a lot of farms like in Europe use them, especially for heating homes and stuff like that. Yeah.
So it's not really a replacement for creating electricity, for using the energy to boil water to turn the turbine with magnets and to generate electricity. It's
Yeah.
more like
It's more of
used
a,
for a heat source. Is that the
well,
source of energy?
yeah, you can use it as heat, or I mean, it's really just whatever you find a use for it. You know.
So did
There's-
you put manure in yours and get heat?
I have not run anything through it yet because I didn't want to bring something
So I
that had
wonder about
manure.
farm applications. Like, is this something where the farmers could use? Or
Yeah.
warm a chicken house or something? Like,
Might not be the safest idea, but you could. Flame, yeah.
So would the main, or one of the main benefits be, since methane is a really powerful greenhouse gas,
Mhm.
the benefit would be as much from removing that from the atmosphere as the energy that is produced through, or I guess both of them combined would be.
Yeah, methane isn't really the best for the atmosphere, but if you were to have something like this, and say you had cows, if you wanted to take that manure and instead of letting it just gas off in your field, if you were to take that and put it in the digester and burn off the methane itself, that would be a little bit better for,
Right.
yeah, if that answers your question.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I got the barrel from my mentor, um, and the feed tube was about, I want to say $15 at Wagner's, and the valves were, I want to say 15 as well, but yeah. So the stir was a bit. I made an error with that, and I made it a bit too tall, so it didn't fit in the digester. It would have been in there, but I didn't have the time to correct it, and yeah.
Plan, like, do you plan to use it or give it to someone to use?
Well, I do have somebody that would take it, but I'll have to kind of see what I can really put it to use. Because if I'm going to use it, sure. If somebody else can use it, I would be more than happy to give it to them.
Plan for it, since
Yeah.
I knew you wanted to wait not to lift the manure in.
Yeah.
We appreciate you not bringing.
Oh yeah.
In your research, did it show how much time it takes to pull that gas off of that and what you do with the rest of the waste if you turn around and use it for fertilizer or
Yeah.
compost?
I couldn't really find any metrics on that, but I do know that from my mentor's experience, he says it's pretty fast in getting that methane off.
Temperature and things like that.
Oh yeah. Forgot I had that on.
Will it automatically open in a new tab, or do I have to like?
It says when they're completely done to hit escape. And then,
Will this automatically open a new tab when I click
it
on
won't,
it?
yes,
Okay, I just didn't want to mess that one up.
right.
It's supposed to be that way. Her first slide is black, and then a picture, and then her title slide. Okay.
They're waiting outside.
Stuck in 105 for the rest of the night.
Yeah. Hey, good.
I'm off to Lucasville.
Yeah, see ya.
It's terrible. Another one. There's just 4 judges the whole night.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, I know there's more coming. I don't know what happened to her screen. Did I have you in school? Who are you? Just tell me who you are.
Andrea, I was cruising school. Yeah.
I'm like, I know I had her. Like,
Yep.
when?
You sure did.
So what are you teaching?
I'm 4th grade special ed.
Oh, you're 4th grade special ed. Okay,
Yeah.
well, that sounds interesting. I'll keep you
Yeah.
going. Well, good luck.
Yeah,
Enjoy
thank you.
that.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
It's just
Kim, I got the pictures, thank you. No. I cross them before I make the posters. I think I'll edit it.
Other side. Yep. Depends, where does she want to stand? Are you going to stand on this side?
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes. That's perfect. Doesn't matter where. Your nails are gorgeous.
Thank you. They're from prom.
Perfect.
Am I allowed to check this out?
Absolutely.
Yes. I mean, we could have Greg tell jokes.
Reminder, we are live streaming, so if you need to say Are my judges ready? Looking at this photo, many would think, what a nice group of friends. But what you don't see is that these friends are sitting together in the school's designated smoking area. In fact, when my parents were in high school, they had the option of either chewing tobacco or smoking a cigarette while in health class. This is from my dad's 1985 yearbook. This photo just goes to show how far we have truly come in our research with smoking and what I believe we will one day see with vaping. My name is Emma Collins, and vaping introduces a plethora of unsafe chemicals to the body that are not regulated. My goal is to educate future generations on the importance of saying no, but before educating future generations, I first had to understand why I was choosing to advocate for this issue. About 3 years ago, I decided on the healthcare field, and about a year after that, I decided on oncology. Since smoking is one of the leading causes of lung cancer, I knew that it was important to keep my peers out of my treatment chair. About a year into my healthcare journey, about a year ago, we talked about the respiratory tract and what smoking and vaping does to the respiratory tract. This honestly all really scared me because there is just so much unknown about the smoking and vaping and what it does to our body. So when many people think about smoking or vaping, they think about nicotine, but there are so many more chemicals we need to be worried about, such as propylene glycol and acrolein. Propylene glycol is what creates the thick white smoke that you see when a vape is used, and has side effects such as dizziness, nausea, and headaches. Acrolein is a highly volatile chemical that is dangerous and harms the respiratory tract, the eyes, and the skin. And believe it or not, it is used in a military combat weapon known as tear gas. It has been linked with cell death and Alzheimer's disease. But to make matters worse, we cannot control how fast they are entering the body. Many different vape body styles have been manufactured, and everyone is a little bit different, and there are many modifications the consumer can make to the body style to help heat the chemicals faster, and they enter the body faster. So our very own SRO, Jeff Cunningham, has said, after seeing the effects of vaping, I believe it grabs hold of a person like an illness that has no cure. Just like it took several decades for the Surgeon General report to understand the effects of smoking tobacco, it may take us that long to understand the health risks associated with vaping, but we know it cannot be good. So I would like to show you what a nurse would hear if they were to listen to the lungs of a long-time smoke or vaping user. What you will hear is expiratory wheezing, and is caused by the narrowing or obstructed airways in the lungs. So you hear this high-pitched wheezing here, and it is because the lungs are not inflating as well as they would with a normal, healthy lung. So we're worried about the chemicals, but we're also worried about the flavorings. Flavorings are just as harmful. Flavors such as sweet mint or strawberry have been linked with inflammatory responses. Rats exposed to these chemicals, even when nicotine-free vapor was used, developed expiratory wheezing or labored breathing. In fact, chemicals in the flavorings are not regulated. The FDA does not require that manufacturers explicitly list what is contained in each flavoring, meaning the consumer has no real way of knowing what is entering their body. But we market these products to our youth. So many manufacturers claim that vaping is safer, but it is not, and they even give the added bonus of it being a great way to quit, but this is not true. This is because there's so much more nicotine entering the body, and there's many fun flavors that say to the children, hey, this is okay, but it's not. These flavors appeal to the youth. These flavors that you find in vapes, you could go into a candy store and a child would find the same flavors. This says to the children, this is marketed to you, but it is not. This is not safe for children or adults of any kind. So I knew I had to do something. Many kids believe they are invincible, and they say, what I do to my body now does not matter. But that is not true. If you start down the path as a young student, you are more likely to continue the path as you get older. And I had to keep my peers out of my treatment chair. I would hate to see somebody I knew coming to get treatment from me, knowing I did nothing to push them towards the right path. So I had to take action. But what was I going to do? I decided on a freshman health class for the freshman students. I decided on the freshmen because they have 4 years of high school ahead of them, and that's a lot of peer pressure. I knew if I could give students a way to say no, my product could be beneficial long after I graduate. But what would I teach? I knew I was going to teach about why vaping is bad. So I taught how vaping becomes addictive, what vaping does to the lungs, how vapes work, and about the brain's reward system. So it came time for my first class. I got a little bit nervous when my first class came, but that was okay. We made it through, and we taught the students everything they needed to know. We started with a slideshow lecture about why vaping is bad. This lecture was for all students, and it was real, raw information. I knew I had to keep my students engaged, so I gave them a worksheet. I knew throughout my high school career, if I had a worksheet keeping me accountable, I learned so much more. So I knew this was important for my students as well, because I wanted them to take what I was teaching them and apply it to their life. But I know not every student can learn from a lecture alone. For most students, it probably went in one ear and out the other. But I knew if I said every student's favorite words, hands-on, they might learn something more. So we went to a lab. We talked about healthy and diseased lungs, what we saw, what we felt, and students were even invited to come up, put on a pair of gloves, and touch and feel the lungs, as you can see in my 2 photos here. I know organs are not for everyone, so this was not a required lab, but it was highly encouraged. After we looked at the lungs, we opened the floor up for group discussion. Me and my mentor did our best to answer questions, and every student had a different question. Our questions ranged anywhere from, how did this lung become this bad, to how can I quit? And there were options as to how students could quit. But with any good projects comes a few challenges, but these challenges would only help me grow as a student, a nurse, and a person. My first challenge was communication. I was blessed with 2 mentors to help me throughout my project, but one was a great mentor. He was very timely. He always answered my emails and gave me the information I needed, and he really helped push me towards the right path. My other mentor, while she was still a great person, she was not as helpful. Her communication was few and far between, and our biggest barrier was the fact that we live in different cities. So it was really hard to find a time to meet up to actually talk. Now, this woman is a very busy woman, and she may have been stretched a little bit too thin, so I give her credit for helping me. But this ultimately forced me to be flexible and learn how I could take charge and help my project out. My next challenge was freshmen. Freshmen think they are invincible, and what they do now doesn't matter, and I'm Superman. Freshmen do not think that what they do now will harm them and throughout their life, but this is not true. Freshmen, when they start on the path of smoking or vaping, they are more likely to continue it up until adulthood, and maybe up until time of death. But to end on a positive note, our research has come so far from the days of smoking areas, but that also means our technology has come just as far, and it still has a long ways to go. But if we can help push our youth towards the right path, they will have the empowerment to say no. Thank you. Do my judges have any questions?
I have a very silly question, but did you have real lungs, or were those peppers, or what?
We can go back and look at them.
Yeah, but-
So these lungs are pig lungs.
Okay.
This lung here was basically put on lung life support, and it was filtered with the same smoke that you inhale when you were smoking or vaping. Yeah. Yes.
You mentioned like your first class, so did you teach multiple freshmen, or did it last?
So it was a 2-day thing, and I taught every freshman health class that he would teach in a normal day. So that ended up being 6 classes. Yeah.
So I would argue with Officer Cunningham that we knew for decades before any controls were put on tobacco.
Mhm.
And the same thing with the vaping, we've known the effects of that. So in your research, did you come across any explanation of why it took so long? Or why it's taking so long to restrict vaping?
So no, but I would like to give you my stance on it.
That's
My
what I'd like to-
My stance is that we're manufacturing these to the general population. So the average person that's not looking for this information thinks, hey, this is being marketed as safer than a traditional cigarette. So they're using this as a way to curb their addiction, basically. And it's leading them down a horrible path. Yeah.
Was it challenging to find research that focused on the effects of vaping versus smoking traditional cigarettes?
I would like to say yes, but not really. We have quite a bit of research, but it's not being spread to the general population.
Did you find anything out about the companies who produce these, what their stance or what they believe?
So I didn't focus my research on that. I focused more on a traditional cigarette versus a vape. But these manufacturers are basically selling on the fact that the general population doesn't know anything. And they're marketing stuff that they can say is true, but it's really not. Yeah.
Was there any exciting moments showing the kids the lungs?
Oh yeah, there was a lot. So we had a few that were a little shy, that were like, organ's not for me. But I had majority of students that wanted to come up and they're like, this is so cool. And in that worksheet I mentioned, I asked them to tell me their favorite part about the lab. And a lot of it was seeing the diseased lung. And I don't know if you can see it, this is kind of bad, this quality is kind of bad, but there is a tumor right here. So seeing that for them was very like eye-opening, I guess. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Do you have any students that reached out and asked for help with vaping or getting away from that?
There were two. There were two students that asked to talk to school personnel, and once that was said, I took that to the appropriate people, and that was out of my hands.
You mentioned the reward system of the brain.
Yeah.
What did you find about that? How does that connect to
So,
vaping problem?
so the nicotine in vapes, tobacco, cigarettes, all of it, it triggers the dopamine in your brain, and it gives you that false happy feeling, and eventually your brain becomes dependent on that false dopamine, and normal things that would typically make you happy, like going out and playing your favorite sport, don't make you quite as happy anymore. All right. Thank you. I don't know where you would like these.
Thank you, ma'am.
It's not right. This isn't the right slideshow. She pulled up the wrong one. It's in the right room, it's just not the right slideshow. It's not Henley's turn. I think we had them out of order. Should be this one. You gotta. It clips on your shirt, so it'll be out of your way. Just anywhere up in this area, either side. Oh.
I'm gonna pull my shirt down.
Oh no. Make
Down.
sure it works for you down. Yeah. Oh, I haven't.
Oh, well, it still works.
Yeah, well, these can be harder, from what I understand, harder to.
5 minutes.
Let's turn your just a little bit.
Okay, is it supposed to be back this way? That's fine. Okay. All right.
We get fancy tables this year. That's it.
So my first one was.
Okay.
It's not quite in the camera.
So this is, what's the most fancy?
Okay. Yeah, I thought you meant like back that way.
Yeah, I had it too.
Okay.
I was like, last night, I'm like, oh, it's actually.
See if that's.
Was it one of those tiny desks?
No, it was. Can I move you that way just a smidge?
I didn't have a mouse either. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's push it down a little bit. Oh my God, these are getting bigger. And the desks were really squished together. I'm like,
Going down the aisle sideways.
At the end of the 2 minutes, are you shutting the door? Okay. No, absolutely not.
Judges, are you all logged into session 2588, Allison?
Are my judges ready? Take a moment and visualize yourself as a young child who is forced to live with an alternative care family. You have never met these people before, and you can't even sleep in your own bed at night. You are having emotions you have never felt before. These emotions are depression and anxiety. This is the feeling of children living in foster care. Hi, I'm Allison McDonough, and children in foster care suffer from depression, anxiety, and other disorders. I chose this topic for my product because it relates to me in multiple different ways. When I was younger, I was placed into many different foster homes. I was only 8 years old when I was first placed into the care system. All I felt was fear and deep sadness. The last thing I wanted to do was live with strangers, but who was I to have a say in that? I also noticed long-term effects from me living in the system. I was super dependent on people's company constantly, and I still fear being separated from my family to this day, even at 18 years old. I wanted to give children something in foster care that I never had, which was empathy. Now, children in foster care, the main feelings they feel are fear, confusion, and sadness. They often feel this way because it's hard for them to find someone trusting enough to ease their anxiety. These children also struggle to make new friends due to the difficulties of having to adjust to new people, new homes, and new school environments. Now, children aren't put into foster care for no reason. Between 60 and 80% of reported children have suffered a traumatic childhood event. These traumatic childhood events, also known as ACE or adverse childhood experiences, are often the beginnings of the depressive and anxious state that children in foster care suffer from. Adverse childhood experiences can consist of many different things. They are often caused by physical or sexual abuse, neglect, or even the death of a parent. This trauma piled onto a foster child all at once can cause them to have negative outcomes that can lead into their adulthood. PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, can also lead up to these child's future. Adults who have been in the foster care system or have experienced traumatic childhood events are also known to have poor mental health outcomes. These poor mental health outcomes can cause them to threaten their relationships, not only with their significant others, but also with their friends and family members as well. They also may participate in activities to threaten their physical health. These activities may include using tobacco products, misusing medication, and even attempting suicide. Not only do children struggle from the foster care system, but adults do just as much. Now, there are ways to help the children in the system. First and foremost, the parent can sympathize and give reassurance to the child, letting them know that the way they are feeling is normal and completely okay. And answering questions a child may have can also help them cope with the situation better, especially when answered in full honesty. And mental health is one of the hardest struggles for children in foster care, and they deserve to feel love and affection, but not only from their biological parents, but from their foster parents as well. So for my product, I decided to make toys for foster kids. I did this with crochet. Now, from being a former foster child, I didn't have anything that was just for me to have. So I wanted to give children something of their own to take with them wherever and whenever they went. And crocheting was very hard for me in the beginning because it's not something I've done before. So I had a lot to learn and many challenges I had to face. The very first challenge was being able to start up my project. I have never started crochet, so I didn't even know how to get it started. This required me to read a crochet pattern and abbreviations. I didn't know how to do this, but luckily I had a great mentor to help me. And once I got the hang of reading the patterns and abbreviations, it was super easy and I was able to go with the flow and get my project done. Another thing I had to learn was sewing. Many toys, like this turtle here, had to be made in separate parts and sewn together. And I have never hand sewed with thread or yarn before with a day in my life, so this was very hard for me to do. I had to make sure that I was sewing it and making it secure enough that it wasn't going to come apart on me or the child playing with it. Now, like I said, with my challenges, I had ways that I helped overcome these complications. One being my mentor, she showed me how to read the patterns, read the abbreviations, and start my project up. Another very helpful tool I used was YouTube. This had step-by-step videos on how to create certain toys, but eventually I was able to lean off watching the whole video and just skip through and read the patterns on the screen. And even though I know I can't make a long-term difference for children in foster care, I want to take their mind off the negativity even just for a second for them to feel joy. From being a foster child in the past, I know exactly how these children are feeling, and I wanted to give them hope with just one toy at a time. Thank you. Do my judges have any questions? In the beginning, it took me hours, but once I got the hang of it, I could get one done. If it was one I've done before, I could get it done in like 30 minutes. Because they're not very big. I have a prop right here. Like, I made 15 because my goal was 15 to 25, and I did end up making the minimum because it was something I've never done before. So, yeah.
Was helping foster kids your first choice, or were you kind of hesitant to kind of go this route?
I was hesitant because it's more of like something I wouldn't want to go back to if you think about it. But I pushed through it, and I thought it was a good idea.
Are you glad you did it, though?
Yeah, I am. I'm very happy I learned something new. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, I just have some comments. First of all, I just wanted to say, was size a factor, because, kids, it's hard for them to carry stuff around, so I thought that it was kind of ingenious that they're small enough that they can just tuck them away, carry them in their hand. So I thought that was really ingenious of you, that they're something they can carry in their hand. And then I just wanted to thank you for sharing such a personal story, you know, with
Yeah.
us. And I think I read in your paper that your mom had passed away.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to say that she'd be really proud of you.
Thank you.
What made you decide to go with the crocheted animals, since that was something, that specifically, since that was something you had never even approached?
So, my mom crocheted a lot. So I wanted to do something along those lines since I'm already doing something along the lines anyway. And I thought that'd be a great idea because if I'd done it, I would have like have a good memory of her because it's something she'd done a lot, and I liked it that she did that.
That's awesome, you did really good.
Thank you. I picked it up really fast, surprisingly.
Do you plan to continue to do this?
I plan to continue to crochet, but it might be more of like making the little toys and selling them on Etsy and stuff because there is a lot of time and money that go into them. So,
They're adorable.
thank you.
Did the, so like, just get in contact with like social services and ask like, hey, could you give these to kids, or how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, they set up like they have a lobby thing. I've been there before, and so I just set something up in there and just did it from that.
And they were like, sure, we'll take them. Like, they were like,
Because when I was in foster care, there was one time where they had like little boxes of stuffed animals. They weren't handmade; they were just like little bought stuffed animals, and it was something along those lines. But yeah,
You talked about like making them and selling them on Etsy. Have you thought about doing, especially with the size, have you thought about doing like, you know, for everyone purchased, one will be donated type of a thing to kind of
I
kind of
haven't, but
encourage,
yeah, that would be a good idea.
you know, and that way you can kind of get that purpose out there too.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. Maybe have a class. I still rely on YouTube a lot, but eventually I'll get the hang of it. I'll give this.
Set you up on the right words.
first one was fine.
Good, how are you doing?
Fourth grade special ed.
Why to have her?
Just told me I was a judge. Are you not?
Good, how are you?
Good.
How are you? Yeah, he misses you too. He asks about you all the time. I did not.
But everybody said I could go somewhere.
I did not realize he wasn't playing softball. So I was like, well, it's okay, you'll see her at softball. And then we got there and I was like, oh, I think you won't remember. Yeah. Where's the suspense? Yeah. I get that. Right, yeah. That was me when Lindy decided not to play volleyball. Enjoyed my plans. I really like my plans. I'm sure that would go over good, but as far as like switching them out and stuff. Yeah. Well, how did you keep them alive really well? I realize it's not very hard. But. Gardening's my thing. Very good gardening. Houseplants though, I had an orchid and Mom was like, it literally said 2 ice cubes a week. That's it. That was all you had to do to keep it alive. I'm like, my favorite words ever. Asparagus. No, you're good. You're good. Oh, asparagus.
Jay's fighting me. Are my judges ready?
Are all the judges on
When originally introduced, glyphosate was set to be a game changer. Upon further research, we have learned the negative effects and drawbacks that this chemical can have. Hi, my name is Ian Kurtz, and I believe that education is a critical component in seeing a successful next generation of farmers. So I want to start by telling you guys about glyphosate. What is glyphosate? So glyphosate is the active ingredients in a lot of your big name herbicides, like Buccaneer Plus, Roundup, just to name a few. So it was originally not intended to be a herbicide. It was originally created as a chelating agent to clear mineral deposits off hot water settings, or hot water pipes in commercial hot water settings. It was patented in 1958 as a herbicide, but then was patented again in the early 2000s as an oral antibiotic. I'm not a scientist and I'm not a genius, but I can tell you that you can't have something that is supposed to kill a plant, an undesirable plant, and then take that and turn it into an antibiotic. So I'll talk to you about the use of glyphosate, when it is used. So in the 1980, Monsanto, the parent company of Roundup, introduced their Roundup Ready seeds. These seeds were supposed to be able to be sprayed Roundup directly onto them while not harming the desired crop, but killing the undesirable plants surrounding them. So in 1996, these Roundup Ready seeds take off. You see a skyrocketing amount of farmers beginning to use these Roundup Ready seeds. And in turn, we're seeing a lot more glyphosate being sprayed, a lot more Roundup being applied. By 2014, use has increased 15 times since the 70s. So since the introduction of glyphosate, we have seen a 15-time uptick in the use of this product. So 19 billion pounds approximately. That's a rough figure that we have applied 19 billion pounds of this chemical across the world. And by 2014, since it was patented. So I want to talk to you about the impacts, the why I chose to pick researching glyphosate. So it was determined by the International Agency for Research on Cancer to be probably carcinogenic to humans, meaning it has cancer-causing abilities, and they have determined that. The individuals exposed to this were also chosen to be at a higher risk for developing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, a form of cancer. Causes damage to DNA and cells. So cancer is started by mutations in cells. If these cells are damaged, that can allow mutations to begin, thus allowing for cancer to begin to pop up in these individuals. So there was a case where Mr. Johnson, Dwayne Johnson, was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He chose to file a lawsuit against Monsanto, the parent company of Roundup, after 2 instances where he was soaked completely in Roundup as a groundskeeper for a school and then diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The court and the jury ordered Monsanto to pay him $289 million in reparations. There was an incident also in Earlmont, California, just a small town in California, where a 160-acre field was sprayed with Roundup. A mist from that spray drifted into the small town of Earlmont, where 150 people were forced to evacuate their homes with symptoms of dizziness, nauseous, lightheaded, vomiting. They were then, 29 of them were sent to the hospital with these symptoms. So for my product, again, education was my big thing on my project. So for my product, I chose to do a grasslands contest. So to show you what a grasslands contest is, it is a contest consisting of 4 parts. Part number 1 being grassland condition. Students are given a 50 by 50 square, and with that 50 by 50 square, they are expected to determine whether this field has been spot grazed, rotationally grazed, evenly grazed, brush hogged, and there's some other components to that section as well. They're also expected to do a soil evaluation. So I had people from USDA out at the site. They took soil tests, then took those soil tests and made sheets. These students were given a select amount of information where they had to figure up limestone rates and fertilizer rates for this given pasture. They also have to do a wildlife habitat section. This is where MDC came in. Out of the same 50 by 50 square, they're expected to determine if wildlife-friendly forbs are present for animals like rabbit, quail, but they're also expected to figure out the nearest diverse idle area, escape cover. So basically, if this environment would be suitable for small game like quail and rabbits. They're also expected to do a plant identification. They're given 25 plants out of a list of 100 plus that they have to identify, but also determine the life cycle of the plant. So whether it's biennial, perennial, annual. So putting it together, there was a lot of moving parts that I didn't realize. So first I had to create a flyer, which it is on the next slide, but it was a flyer announcing my contest, getting the word out there so other schools were aware of what I was doing. So I also had to connect. I mentioned talking to people from USDA and MDC, so I had to coordinate with them so that they were able to get out there and judge my 50 by 50 square and get the necessary paperwork completed. I had to set up the 50 by 50 square. This picture was actually taken the day I put it up. So I'd gone out there to put it up, and it was bluebird sunny skies, and then typical Missouri weather, did a complete 180, and it was thundering and lightning and pouring in about 20 minutes. That was after the fact. You can kind of see it faintly, I think, the square, but it's just a 50 by 50 square marked with pink ribbon. So packets. I was gifted enough to get in contact with people at USDA and West Plains to print these packets, but there's a packet for each component of the contest. So each section has their own packet, but also the information that the student needs to complete that packet. So here's the flyer I talked about earlier. It just discusses what I was doing, also gives a date and how they were able to contact me to get registered. So my goals, again, like I talked about, was to educate tomorrow's farmer. I want to see a successful generation come up with myself. I want to see agriculture continue into the future as long as I'm alive. But I also wanted to bring attention to this contest. This isn't your typical spring CDE, LDE that are usually presented to FFA kids. This is a contest that is hosted in the fall, and not much attention is brought to it, not as much as the others. But I believe that this is one of the most valuable contests that students can be exposed to. So I want to break down why I chose to do this. I'm actually a fourth generation farmer. My great-grandpa purchased 365 acres when he moved down here from Iowa, and he farmed it, my grandpa farmed it, my dad farmed it, and now I am farming it. So I have competed in grasslands every year since I started high school. So from my freshman to now, I have competed in this contest and fell in love with it. I have learned so many valuable skills that I apply every day on the farm from this contest, and I wanted to see others get that same experience. So some challenges I faced was one, scheduling. So in the fall, there's a really short window that these contests are held from the time school starts and when the district contests are held. So I had to make sure that my contest wasn't going to overlap with any other contests to conflict with students' attendance to come to mine. But I also had to worry about fall sports, that USDA and MDC people would be able to be present, and that all necessary individuals could be there. Another thing was communication. So for like the 3 weeks leading up to my project, I was sending emails every day before and after school, back and forth with ag teachers to figure out how many kids they had coming, what time they needed to be there, what they needed to bring. Another thing was the weather. I've competed in these contests when it's been 1,000,000 degrees outside, and I've competed in these contests when it's been cold and wet, neither of which are very fun. You're not competing at your maximum potential. We were super blessed that day to have the weather we had. There's a picture of the contest day. It was sunny and 75. I couldn't have asked for anything more. My end goal with this project was to educate tomorrow's farmer. I want to see a successful generation come up with myself, and I believe that in educating individuals about glyphosate and the impact it can have, but also by educating the youth of tomorrow in the basic fundamentals of running a small operation, that we will be able to see a successful farming. Do my judges have any questions?
Yeah, I do. Tie the two together and went from there to your other deals. Put them together for me.
So again, I just wanted to educate. glyphosate is one thing that is talked about a lot, but it's just the negatives of it. I understand as a farmer that glyphosate is a necessary evil. It is something that we have to use because there's not many alternatives to glyphosate. No other chemical is going to do what glyphosate does. So I wanted to spread that the effects that it can have, but that also it again is a necessary evil. You need to use it, and it is a very effective thing. But I also showed in this grassland evaluation contest, gave them basic fundamentals like plant identification, soil rate, or limestone rates, and fertilizer rates. So the whole summary of this thing was just educating the next generation. Anybody else have questions?
How many schools or people attended?
I believe it was 6 or 8 schools, but we had like 40 plus kids there. It was I was super excited to see that many kids out there.
Did you manage that? Did you went to the contest? Were you the one in charge
Mhm.
to
Yeah, so
do all the instructions, et cetera?
if I can get back to it. This ugly mug in the blue shirt, that's actually my dad. So he's big into grasslands, so he works at USDA. So he was really helpful in me getting all this together. But he was actually the one that would help walk students through the plant identification because he's a lot smarter than I am. But he would walk them through the plant identification, the why behind the answers that they were chose. I'm actually got a scholarship to go fish at Drury this fall. So I'm headed up there the second week of August and start the next path of my life. I'm going to go for environmental biology, and then from there I'm trying to get into the Game Warden Academy. That's the plan anyhow. We'll see. Any other questions? Thank you guys for your time.
There you go.
Thank
There
you.
are the points.
Yeah, yeah, I'm changing that,
Your
changing that.
grandpa used to work at
Yep. Did he? Well, now we found the disconnect. You're gonna have to move.
Points lost.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Get out. Don't mess up.
Did it go okay?
Yeah.
You have 2 minutes. Want to speed walk it? I can speed walk it.
Okay, okay. Am I good here? Okay. Are my judges ready? This is the best day I've ever had. This is a quote from one of the students involved in my senior project after just our very first time meeting. Mentoring can have positive benefits on the younger generation. Social, emotional, and academic benefits can be produced. Hello, my name is Henley Johnson, and for my senior project, I wanted to make a positive effect on the younger generation in our rural community. It was very easy for me to figure out what I wanted to do my senior project on. Both of my parents have been in education my entire life, and I have got to see firsthand the impact that they have on all of their students. I also was involved in the A+ program at Willow Springs High School. Mentoring is not a new idea, but was first originated in ancient Greece. They hope to teach the younger generation knowledge, culture, skills, and values from the older generation. Mentoring can also be used in a couple different ways, one being a casual relationship and one being a professional pairing. They can both have positive benefits, it just depends on each and every scenario. Mentoring is used in a couple different ways today. The one you most know is A+. That is more of a group setting, but a more one-on-one experience is the Big Brother, Big Sister program. Another mentoring program is called Mentor 2.0. This is utilized mainly for college students who need guidance throughout their education. My idea for my senior project was to take something that already existed, the Big Brother, Big Sister program, and turn it into my own. In order to do this, the first thing that I would have to do was make it become a group setting. I was also only able to meet with these students once monthly. Mentoring has been proven to be effective, especially because of the home life. Especially living in a rural community, home life is not the best for most students. This mainly being because of a two-parent household. 1/3 of students do not live in a two-parent household. And of those that do live in a two-parent household, it is commonly cohabitating or stepfamilies. Oxytocin and vasopressin are peptide hormones within the brain. These hormones can be produced because of these positive relationships that they build with others. Without these hormones being produced, these students can be left feeling alone. To get started on my program, the first and most important thing that I had to do was gather my volunteers. Without good volunteers, this could have a negative effect on the younger students, so I wanted only the very best. In order to do this, I created an application on Google Forms and put it in the announcements that I would be hosting this event. I then sent the application to anyone that was interested. Once I gathered enough applications, I met with a committee of teachers that would help me review them and pick only the very best students to be a part of my program. Once I selected 10 high school students to help me with my program, I needed to pair them with elementary students. In order to do this, I sat down with my mentor and we looked at a list of students that had been referred to the program. We then paired them with a high school student based on their personality and how well they would mesh together. The last thing I had to do was get these elementary students involved. This was very difficult, so I first created a permission slip. I sent this permission slip home with them, and some of them were returned. Some of them were not, and I had to find a different way to get a hold of their parent. I then began planning. The first thing that I had to do was pick dates to have my project. I decided to go with the second Tuesday of each month, from 3:30 to 5:30 after school. I then created flyers. I wanted these flyers to be exciting so that the kids would see them and have something to look forward to throughout the month. I also had to create itineraries. When you're working with small children, it is very important to have a packed itinerary so that there's not time for discipline issues to arise. I also wanted to place an emphasis on education throughout my senior project. In order to do this, I had an allotted time for homework and reading within every meeting that we had with the elementary students. I also found it very important to have engaging activities every time we met. This was difficult because of the various ages and having both girls and boys involved in the program. The first time we met, it was around Thanksgiving time, so the first two pictures on the left are from the first time we met, and we had a movie night, we did some icebreakers, got to know each other. Then it was around Christmas time, so we built gingerbread houses and had hot chocolate and just other Christmas type things. And then we had a game night. We went to the gym and played games, minute to win it games. And then I also wanted to get one of the clubs within our school involved in my program. So I had the FBLA come and they brought the mascot, and that was really fun for the kids. And then we also did an Easter egg hunt where they created their own little Easter bags, and we got to go outside and have an Easter egg hunt. Throughout my project, I had many challenges, the biggest one being communication. This is because there were so many people involved. I had to figure out how to communicate with the high school students, which I did through email, text, and social media. And then I also had to figure out how to communicate with the students' parents in the elementary. This was very difficult. I started by sending home flyers, but also had to make phone calls, send texts, and I even created a classroom within the Remind app so I could send announcements before each time we met. I also encountered rescheduling conflicts. One of my events was rescheduled 2 times and one of them once because of the weather. This also led to issues with communication because I had to make sure that those elementary students' parents knew when we would meet next. I also had to take on some leadership roles that I was not used to. I had to be a leader not only to the elementary students, but to the high school students as well. There was a lot that went into my project that I didn't realize at first. The first thing being that I would have to buy the supplies before each and every time we met. I also would have to get everything ready before the day of. I would have to make copies, make example crafts, and do everything I could beforehand so everything would run smoothly when the kids were present. I also had to make sure that each student had a note to stay after school. Some of these students had the notes each time, and some of them did not. If they did not have a note, I would have to find a different way to get in contact with their parent the day of the event so they were allowed to stay with me after school. It was also very important for me to get feedback once I got finished with my project. The first feedback that I received was that there had been a decrease in discipline issues with students involved in my project in the elementary. I also wanted to get feedback from high school students. One of these students saying that I have another little sister now and I couldn't be happier. Another student saying, seeing all of their faces light up when we got there was so heartwarming. I hope throughout my senior project, I made a positive impact on the younger generation and made you strive to make someone say, this is the best day I've ever had. Thank you. Do my judges have any questions?
Plan on continuing this on with, or hand it down?
I did talk to someone that was a mentor for me and asked if he would be interested in it, but I'm not sure yet.
I think it's worthwhile.
As for a mentor, I would love to see it, and I've asked Ms. Wilson to add it to the list.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's worthwhile.
What was your favorite part?
I don't know. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it a lot.
You think the impact was on both sides, high school and elementary? Was more overwhelming than you thought, or what?
Yeah, there was a lot that went into it that I didn't realize at first, but it was a lot of fun.
Did you have any problems at all? I mean, with rides or any?
No, not really. I thought that would be an issue with the elementary students, but their parents were there on time.
Great.
Yeah. Yes.
What was the most unexpected challenge you faced or
I knew it would be difficult to get in contact with the elementary students' parents, but some of them, like, there was just no, so then we had to go other routes, so.
Did you have have a little meeting with your group afterwards and just like little meetings to discuss what went on with your group?
We had a couple different meetings before it started, just, to talk about what would go on and stuff. And then I did get feedback from my high school mentors throughout the program to see if they had any suggestions for upcoming events. Thank you. Thank you.
want to see the camera, you can. It's good on the camera. You you have to stand on the white line.
Okay.
So,
I'll do that.
yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Are my judges ready? Speed. I am speed. The opening line from the hit film Cars. Growing up, Cars was always one of my favorite movies, and I always had this desire for speed. However, it was very clear that being a child in elementary school, I could not achieve this sort of speed. So, eliminating the physical risk and to avoid giving my mom a heart attack, I knew I could take this chance from a virtual perspective, which is why for my senior project, I created a racing simulator. Hi, my name is Colton Stolba, and video games are extremely beneficial and are revolutionizing industries. Looking back at my past, I have a vast history in the racing industry. Growing up, my family has always been involved in racing, and I have always grown up around race cars. So this, stacked on top of my love for Lightning McQueen, obviously meant that I had a burning passion for racing. So when it came to deciding my senior project, I knew I wanted to do something I was passionate about, which happened to be racing. Beyond this, I had noticed a change in the racing world. Growing up, not only did I love racing, but I've also loved video games. And video games have quickly evolved into sim racing, which is another form of a video game, but is much more accurate than a video game. Using the knowledge and what I learned, I knew that I wanted to combine these two things and to create something I loved. Beyond this, I decided to conduct my research on video games. Most people have their own opinions on video games, but are unaware of the effects that video games can truly have. All of us know of the negative effects of video games, and they often seem to be the #1 thing people look at. The most popular of these being addiction. Anyone who has a child who plays video games can know how addictive they may seem, as children love to play them and may have a frustration when you're told they have to get off of them. Next, this addiction has become so bad that the World Health Organization has included a disorder associated with it, known as internet gaming disorder. It is a minor disorder, but it is associated with symptoms such as stress and anxiety and separation. Beyond this, there's this task of social isolation. Leading on with being addicted to the video games, it's very clear that since you're addicted, you isolate yourself to the world around you because of how involved you are with this game. However, were these findings truly accurate? As I furthered my research and looked into more studies, I found that some of these findings maybe weren't the truth. Although they may have seemed true, they were inexperienced critics. Studies had shown that most people who play video games ranged from the age of 35 or lower. However, the people conducting this study and the critics in this study seemed to be above that age. Not only this, these studies were conducted in a lab. I don't know about anyone else, but whenever I play my video games, it is not in a lab. And so, stacked upon being with inexperienced critics and watching this, and being in an unfamiliar environment, the people being conducted may have experienced increased stress and anxiety because of an unfamiliar environment and not being comfortable or natural. And finally, is it truly a bad addiction? All of us have some form of an addiction, and some addictions can be good. Some of us are addicted to learning or addicted to reading. This doesn't necessarily make the addiction bad. A professor at a university in Japan says, I guess if you enjoy your hobby, you're going to find a good impact to your well-being. Or in other words, if you are addicted to something and love it, you're going to find a way for it to have an impact and for it to influence your life positively. Which leads into the benefits of video games. A proper education. Growing up, one of my favorite video games was always Minecraft. And as I've excelled in my career, I've learned how much addition and basic education I learned from Minecraft. And getting into high school and being involved in agriculture education, I learned how much of the agricultural knowledge I had actually came from Minecraft, whether it be the aspects of farming or other agriculturally related elements. There is also an immense amount of engagement. People who play video games obviously have to work together with other people around them in order to achieve their task and achieve their goal. This has improved engagement all around and has also helped create connections. Not only do you work together with people to achieve a task, but you create connections that will last a lifetime. Not only do these skills translate in a video game, but when we leave outside into the real world, these skills have adapted to our actual lives. As I mentioned before, there's been a drastic change in the gaming world as well as racing. This is Jan Martinborough, a high schooler who too had a dream and a passion for racing. However, he also could not get behind the wheel of a physical car. So instead, he sat behind the wheel of a virtual car and played the video game Gran Turismo. His parents always told him and were disappointed in him and told him to find something new and that he should pursue something else, but Jan didn't give up. And this task proved to be beneficial. In the early 2010s, when Nissan Motorsport reached out to sim racers across the world and hosted a competition between the best sim racers for a spot at a seat at Nissan Motorsport, a physical car. Jan ended up winning this and earned a seat at Nissan Motorsport. Beyond this, he pursued this career and became a full-time racing driver, not only racing for Nissan, but placing third at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, one of the most prestigious races in all of motorsport. And all of his skills derived from a video game. And he earned his spot through playing a video game. Beyond this, many athletes who earn their success through the real route and being physical attribute their success as well to the simulator. This is four-time world champion Max Verstappen, who attributes some of his success to the simulator. Unlike the other drivers, when Max isn't on the track, he is behind the wheel of a simulator and turning his pixels and translating those skills to the pavement. Max uses the simulator to fine-tune his skills and make sure that they are on point, and it has proven to be successful. Utilizing my passion and utilizing my research, I developed a racing simulator of my own, which is something where I can finally achieve that need for speed and achieve other matters which can last generations. My process seemed simple at first, but as soon as I dug into it, it proved to be very challenging. I started off utilizing metal and material that I had at my home. I cut these to the proper length after developing a blueprint and cut these together to make my frame. After making my frame, developing this project, I knew that I wanted to use the CNC router in our home. The CNC router was something that was always cool to me, and I knew how much potential it had, and it was a skill that I could learn to help prove my project to be successful. Using this, I put together an outline and a frame to go on the outside of my simulator to really give it that popular pop and make it stand out like every other simulator. And finally, I put all of these pieces together where I've had my final product. In comparison, on the left is the WR1 Racing Simulator, the simulator that most professional racers will use and you can find in all of their facilities. A starting price ready to go for this simulator comes in at around $8,150. My simulator, ready to go, with all the materials I made, cost about $800. And using the materials I already had, it really only cost me about $150. A drastic difference. But this price tag proves to be different for a reason. The WR1 simulator is all aluminum, whereas my simulator is made out of a material called Max Metal, an aluminum composite which is kind of like plastic and aluminum together. Definitely not the same as pure aluminum, but definitely not as bad as wood. And finally, the WR1 is adjustable, whereas my simulator was stationary, meaning that it was fit to my size and it was not able to move to anyone who got in it. Although these comparisons are drastic, do they really justify a $8,000 difference? Max Verstappen once said, "I embrace challenges because they make me stronger." And boy, did I have my challenges. My biggest of these being learning to weld. I had never welded a project like this other than inside my education in agriculture and in FFA. So learning how to weld something on a project this scale proved to be very challenging. As I mentioned, I hadn't welded a project to this scale, and it was something that I had to learn and took a lot of practice and time. Next was learning the programming. Using a CNC router doesn't just work as easy as it seems. There was a lot of programming that went into it, and I had to learn this. I usually seem to be okay with learning new programs, but this software ended up having to run on Windows 7, something I was very unfamiliar with. And it proved to be very slow, and being a high schooler, my patience didn't quite step up to that. And finally, the complexity of this project. It turns out I took Mr. Jackson's geometry class for granted, too much. And I learned how much geometry went into the fabrication process. This proved to be very challenging, but thanks to my mentors and other family members, I was able to work through this and create the product that I loved. Throughout my project, I learned how beneficial video games really are. I learned the benefits regarding mental health and how much they are changing the world through proper training, especially simulators. Companies all around, thanks to simulators, no longer have to worry about the physical risks, such as spending a lot of money on fuel, tires, or even the risk of wrecking. Beyond this, they provide the same amount of experience for a much less cost, and they can do it just about anywhere. And finally, my need for speed. Thanks to this product, I am finally able to feel just like Lightning McQueen and get that desire for speed. Thank you. Do my judges have any questions?
How long did it take you to build this, approximately?
Approximately the actual building process, apart from planning and whatnot, I would say around 30 hours.
Really? Amazing. Can you drive it after this? 'Cause
I can.
You're our last one, I think, today.
I absolutely can. I'd be more than happy to.
All I heard was you called me old and outdated.
Was there a particular skill that you had to learn that you feel like you'll be able to utilize other places? Or do you have a favorite one that you learned?
It was definitely learning how to weld. Like I mentioned, I had only welded in agriculture in my classes in Ag Science 1, and that was as a freshman, and doing this as a senior definitely proved to be different. In ag, we also only learned how to stick weld, and I had to learn how to MIG weld, which seemed a lot easier, but figuring out the fine tuning and all the proper settings was definitely really hard. But it is something that will last me a lifetime.
Good project. I'm not never.
Thank you.
Are we go patent or anything, or?
Probably not. All right, I'll try not to mess up too bad for everyone. It does not matter to me.
Is that any certain track?
Yes, if I'm correct, I will be certain when I get out here. I don't remember what I had it set to. It's either a track, it's one of two tracks in Italy.
Okay.
And this would be an actual track that they race at in Formula One. This is Imola, so in Imola, Italy. And this is the same track that actual Formula One racers will drive on. And they will also use a simulator just like this in order to perfect their skills.
Okay.
So this is a V10 Formula One car from about the early 2000s. They could reach upwards of 200 miles per hour. I cannot see, it is on the right, it's actually in kilometers. That is about 200 almost. But this track doesn't have a lot of straights. They normally reach those speeds on straights, whereas this track has a lot of turns and not as straight. But with cars just like this, they can go just as fast, and especially modern cars, with how much downforce and grip they produce, they can absolutely fly through these corners as fast as they want and just be absolutely glued to the ground. And we are back at the start. So that was a lap around an actual track in Italy. You are welcome. It's not the easiest to get in and out of. Not very much. I could pick it up just like this right now, and it just only took two of us to pull it in here, and that's because of how long it was. I'm sure if it was a little more condensed, I could probably carry it by myself.